Hello and welcome to the Avita Yoga for a Lifetime podcast. I'm Pippa and I'm here to introduce today's Avita Yoga Community Chat, recorded live and available now to listen to anytime. The Avita Yoga Community Chat is a free, informal and welcoming Q&A with Jeff, the founder of Avita Yoga, where students and teachers alike can bring their questions and learn from each other to deepen their understanding of the practice and their own bodies. In today's chat, Jeff gives some suggestions for Avita teachers who have elderly people in their classes, how to deal with the challenges of osteoporosis, medications and bone density, and the importance of having mobility to have good balance. We celebrate a wonderful milestone shared by a student, and we have a really interesting question about hands-on bodywork. Finally, a focus on the Avita Teacher Training, questions about the practicalities of the course, time commitment and structure, but also how it addresses the emotional aspect of the practice. Now on to the chat. Enjoy.
Hey, welcome everyone. Let's see, what kind of questions do you have? Lynn, did you come with some questions?
I don't really have any specific questions today. I just was going to listen, but I could probably think of some. So my group of students is older, a lot of them. So I have like this latest lady, she used to do yoga with me 10 years ago and she's come back, but she's 80. She's had spinal surgery. I'm worried about her balance. I'm worried about her falling in class. And 15 years ago, I had a woman fall in my class and fracture her pelvis. And it's, I mean, it was so, I mean, it was the worst thing that's ever happened to me. And so now this lady, in fact, she fell the other day. She tripped over a bolster and fell. And she said she's got osteoporosis and she didn't hurt herself. I mean, it was just so, anyway, that's the latest thing. And so now I'm just so aware of like coming in from up to down. I mean, even if I'm not doing very many standing shapes or balance shapes, just moving up and down. And she tells me she's got osteoporosis, and I'm saying, well, let's not do the flex. You know, I asked her what her doctor said, what her restrictions are, and she said nothing. I'm on Fosamax. He said I'm good. So, you know, I don't know. Anyway, that's my challenge these days is. And there's a couple others who are very unsteady on their feet, and I'm just, you know, anyway. Got any suggestions or ideas? I'd be happy to take them.
Yeah, it reinforces an idea that I had recently about doing a workshop on balance. You know, because as we talked about in the teacher training, you can work on balance all you want. You can practice balancing, but if you don't have mobility, especially in your ankles and your hips, it's really, really challenging because we got to have little bits of movement in order to balance.
Yeah.
When you watch her move and stand and do some of the shapes, can you tell where the rigidity is coming from? Is it a little bit everywhere, or is it primarily in her ankles or hips?
Hips and back. She's had low backs in her hip. She complains that her hips always hurt. And when she walks, yeah, I mean, ankles definitely too, but I think the hips are her biggest deal. She's been coming twice a week and she loves it, but God, I'm just like, oh my God, I can't do another broken pelvis on my watch. I mean, it was horrible. So,
yeah.
anyway.
That was the first one was many years ago, you said, before
like
Avita?
50, yeah, like it was like at least 10 years ago. I'm bad with date, but yeah. And it was, I mean, I was teaching more regular yoga, and I was in a half moon kind of position and with her hand not on the floor, but on a chair. And she just lost her balance. And I heard the bone break. She fell to the ground and her bone broke.
Yeah. It
was like, and so when this lady fell in my class, I had PTSD. I mean, I was just like, oh my
God. You're acutely tuned in.
And so now, you know, I've just told her I want a chair next to you at all times. I mean, I've told her my story, and you know, she even knew the woman who it happened to. They've both been coming to me for years. And I'm like, Carol, I've got to have you more solid. I cannot have you falling and breaking a bone. I mean,
Yeah.
so anyway, that's my
Yeah.
challenge.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit. It's a broad, big, interesting topic with balance and bone density, and sometimes dealing with the bone density osteoporosis drugs that people take, which can increase the DEXA scan score, the T-score. It can make that better, but the downside that I've heard from both doctors and practice students who've tried those medications is it makes the bones brittle. They get denser, but brittle. And
Wow.
one of the, as you may recall from the physiology, we have osteoclasts that go in. They're like Pac-Man, and they go in and they clean up and remove bone tissue that's no longer getting enough pressure, no longer useful or damaged. And then there's osteoblasts that create new bone and lay down new bone. That's how we repair injuries, and it's how we build bone wherever pressure is present, which adds, which is why we use compression so much in Avita Yoga. What the drugs do is typically they inhibit the osteoclast, which is the little Pac-Man. So the thinking is, if we can stop those guys from taking bone away, then there will be more bone density, right? Which is really great in theory, but the physiology depends on both of those things happening. To have healthy, unbrittle bones, we have to have the process that renews the bones on a regular basis. Deepak Chopra wrote that beautiful article many years ago in Forbes magazine, where he explained that he went through different body parts and said, for example, and I'm off on the numbers, but he said, for example, we get a new liver every 3 weeks. We get a new something, different tissues and different organs renew at different rates. So it's very important that we have the full cycle. We have the full process of removing and replacing. And that's what our yoga depends on, is that cycle. So it gets really tricky. And I know more and more in my conversations with men and women who are at that stage of the game that they've done the research and they're saying, no way, I don't want to take the medications, because the greatest risk is the worst thing than having lack of bone density is falling and breaking something. So then that leads us to the question of mobility. If you were to stand against the wall and close your eyes with one hand on the wall and drop into your feet and ankles, and just balance with the aid of your hand, with your eyes closed, you feel the demand get pushed down into your feet. If you let it, you feel the little movements in your ankles and your feet, and even a tiny bit in your knees. So that's number one. I think number one with these people is working on ankle mobility. And so that's very safe. You can have her on her back with her legs up on the wall, knees bent, feet on the floor, lying on her back. The strap work on the ball, the ball of the foot and the heel, especially going through all those motions, flexion, extension, or dorsiflexion, plantar flexion of the foot, and see with her where, if you can kind of isolate places where there's rigidity. And then also in Sukhasana. That Sukhasana, as you know, is such a, we do it a lot in Avita Yoga because it's such a helpful shape. So when we sit supported on a bolster or on the floor, we cross our legs, and then you start to curve forward, there is pressure that gets put into the front of the foot. And oftentimes, if there's any stickiness in the ankle, it's going to show up there.
Right.
So I would play, you have sequences, and you can play with doing that kind of foot and ankle work, and then talk to her. One of the things that I would talk to a student or sometimes a group of students is the importance, the amazing importance of being able to get up and down off the floor. And one time I had a woman in class in a workshop years ago who really, really had a hard time getting up and down off the floor. So what I said to her is, this is your yoga. You just want to, in a way, practice getting up and down off the floor. You know, Lynn, put a chair nearby, let her use the chair, have her near the wall. So on one level, she has the chair. On the other level, she has the wall. She takes her time standing up. You want to minimize the risk of falling and increase the chance of her understanding at that stage of life that the importance of practicing getting up and down off the floor. Now, we do a fair amount of that in Avita Yoga, at least once or twice during most classes, getting down up and down off the floor. And so that just keeps the joints mobile, and it keeps that kind of important skill available to us before it gets too limited.
And she's 80.
Yeah.
And so you think that there's still hope? I mean,
Well, she keeps coming to class.
Yeah, no, she loved and she likes it. The other interesting thing about her is she's one of those almost hypermobile. She's real overweight now, her stomach, but I mean, in Sukhasana, her knees almost come to the floor. I mean, she's got she's got, I don't know if it's hypermobile, but she's a looser, very loose concept. She can bring her knee in, her knee will flex totally. She can bring her knee into her chest. I mean, except for her stomach's in the way now, but I mean, she's got a lot of mobility going on. So she's
yeah. And so do her ankles and feet match then? Are her ankles and feet?
No, her ankles and feet are, no, her ankle. Yeah. I try to get her to do a heel toe walk. No, she doesn't have it in her ankles and feet.
Okay. So that's the part that doesn't match. And that's what makes balance challenging then. So her hips
I was thinking her hip. Yeah. But because she complains about her hips hurting and the way she walks, but I think that's her low back. But yeah, you're right. It's her ankles. Yeah.
And I think you're right. It's her low back probably, because if her knees drop to the floor, then she does have decent hip mobility. Probably her low back is a little stiff, which is that classic pattern in not just women, but men too. In especially in this kind of in the later years, the low back can get stiff even if the hips stay loose. So what we want to try to do is do the shapes where you start to mobilize her low back and her ankles, and that's going to help her balance more than anything. So what you do, Lynn, is put some challenge into the feet and ankles. Do the strap work, put some challenge there, go for the mobility there for her and everybody else in the room. Use fatigue a little bit. The muscles may fatigue a tiny bit going for that. There may be some cramping, the whole story there. And then get the chair, put her next to the wall, and stand up soon after that. So while there's still some sensation of the previous work in her feet and ankles, and then have her do some of the work we do, like the Virabhadrasana shape at the wall, hands on the wall, feet apart, and nothing else. Just turn the heel out, straighten the knees, tailbone down, that kind of thing, and then feel into your ankles. Feel for the rigidity, feel where there's mobility. And because sometimes what happens is as we age and things tighten up, we get uptight. We get uptight. And so all of our energy comes up into our head and our eyes. And it's kind of, there's this concern about falling when really the beneficial thing would be down and loose, ground down into the feet, ground down and practice the mobility, and then sometimes you can have her come up onto her toes. You lift the heel up, come up onto the toes and through a straight knee. You've seen that shape in my classes, and so it's just various ways. And what that is, Lynn, is just it's a freeze frame in a typical, not a typical walk, but an atypical walk that exposes good possibility in the hip, the knee, and the foot and the toes. So that's, and so one of your questions just a second ago is, Jeff, she's 80 years old, but she is coming to class and she is enjoying it, and she's being proactive. She wants something that's going to help. So you just, as long as she's showing up, keep working with it.
That's
Yeah,
very helpful.
It'd be better if she was 70, you know, but it's what we have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's good advice. I thank you. I'm glad I asked.
Yeah, it's a really good one. Yeah, I'm thinking about doing a mobility balance workshop. Will be my next workshop. Kendall, did you come with a question? Or
No, I just came to listen.
Yeah, all right.
But I found an old photo taken many years ago before I started practicing yoga. So this was before I met you, before I moved to Colorado. And I had the photo taken because my shoulders were so out of balance.
Mm-hmm.
My left shoulder it looks like a couple of inches higher than my right side. And I wanted to see if over time yoga helped. So I lost track of that photo and I just found it again. And it is amazing because my shoulders are back in balance again. And it's all from Avita Yoga, just being very consistent with my practice. So I was so happy to see that. I know it's not about reaching a goal.
Yeah.
But it just felt really good.
Yeah. Yeah, it's beautiful. And what's cool is it just happened.
Yeah.
You know, it just happened. And that's different than, you know, holding the picture up every week and comparing it and,
Right.
you know, and striving for it. You know, we don't try to make symmetry in the body and things like that. So it's beautiful that you just stumbled across those pictures. It's kind of like spirit coming through and saying, hey, Kendall, look what I found. Check this out.
Right.
You know,
Right.
look what's happening.
Keep up the good work. This is making work. Yeah. Yeah. So I just wanted to share that.
It's awesome. That's a reason for celebration. It reminds me of my days in Rolfing school where, you know, as a model, as a Rolfing model, you spend a lot of time in your underwear because they, you know, we'd work on people typically in their underwear, and then you stand up, take a picture. And as a student, we would do that with ourselves, and we'd take pictures along the way as milestones. And so we'd compare the pictures, and I remember the same thing some time ago coming across, because it was 30 years ago that I did that study, and come across these old pictures of me in my underwear. I'm like, okay, I think this is probably the last time I need to look at this.
I can just go in the folder and stay there.
Yeah, and this can go way down at the bottom of the box.
Right.
Yeah, maybe in the trash.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for sharing.
Sure.
All right, Mathis, welcome.
Hey, hi Jeff. How are you guys? I do have a question. You know, my daughter Ellen is really enjoying Avita. I just want to share that. She's doing the 5.0 series, and just it's really helping with whatever issues she was having. She's been really, really happy about that. Mm-hmm. And then I wanted to ask you about one of my youngest daughter in Colorado. She had recently competed in bikini bodybuilding, and she did two of them kind of back to back, and did really well. I mean, she won in the categories, but they do this goofy posing with their left leg that it's just what they all do. And so after she went through this, she said she's just had this terrible pain in her body and in this sort of hip area and stuff. And she didn't talk to me about it, didn't ask me anything, so I wasn't aware of it. And then she went to a guy that out of the gym she goes to, who's a massage therapist. But so what he did is, it sounds like he almost did Rolfing on her, but he, used his like thumb or something and really dug in to those places around her hip and, because she didn't know if it was her hip or her low back or her front or what was happening. And he said it was very common because of that, especially that particular posing for them to have that. But she said the next day, she said it really hurt. And then the next day, it was still sore, but the following day, it was all gone. So I wanted to ask you, what was he doing? Was he just working with the fascia there? And based on what, with your Rolfing experience, and then I wanted to ask about, that process, especially in a case like that, and how fast that worked, and then sort of comparing that with Avita and the gentleness. And I suspect there's a place for both. I just was curious what your thoughts were. Like, would you say that, yeah, sometimes that's the right thing to do? And then, how do you see all that? Because I know Avita is very gentle, and obviously this was not very gentle. It hurt.
Yeah, quite a few questions in there, I think. First of all, I like to think that Avita will address everything, but there's no perfect paradigm out there for everything, I don't think, except perfect peace. When we're in total perfect peace, that would be the epitome of health, because then peace rules everything. And that's why we have that as the backbone of the practice. With a peaceful mind, all healing is possible. But when it comes to, fixing the body and unraveling pain and creating more mobility and things like that, I think Avita is remarkable. And we do target connective tissue in and around the joints, the ligaments, things like that. And that's where, as Rolfers, we learn that's where we get the most mileage. You source the shiny white stuff, add some pressure, and ask for movement. That's what it's all about. And that's how Ida Rolf came up with this idea of reorganizing the body. Now, what it sounds like, I don't know for sure, but what it sounds like this guy did was he either put his thumb or something into the connective tissue and got it to release. And sometimes there's a neurological response too. We get patterning through the nervous system and things like that. And if we catch it soon enough, like she did, and especially at a younger age, it can just get cleaned up very quickly. It would be interesting to see in the case of repetitive activities, does it show up again next time she does that pose or whatever, But he probably either did that, he got a release, a physical release in the connective tissue, and or he got into a trigger point. And what a trigger point is a little bit more muscular. It's sometimes close to the fascial connections, close to the tendon, but it's typically more muscular. And it's just a place where it's like the epicenter of the dysfunction of the moment, and it binds up. And you can, good practitioners there's maps of where the trigger points are, and you find it, you put sometimes painful pressure into that area, and after, you hold it for 30 seconds or so, and then the release happens, it feels better later that day, and then even better the next day, and then shazam, it's gone, so it could be those things. And I'm an advocate, if something is hurting, you've got to keep following the intuition, follow the guidance. And sometimes it will lead you through a number of different practitioners or practices, and until you find something that seems to work. That's what led me to this point in time with Avita Yoga.
Okay. Well, I
Yeah.
appreciate that. Yeah, I like that. All
Mhm.
right. Thanks.
Mhm. Did you have questions about the teacher training?
Yeah, I do. You want me to ask them now?
Sure.
Okay. Well, one question that I have is about how the teacher training um, is different than the replays.
It's different than the replays?
Mm-hmm.
The practice that you're doing online right now, how it's different than that?
Yeah, meaning I recognize that if somebody is going to teach, that there's this thing called a protocol or how we do it, and it's certification and hours or whatever. But in terms of practicality, how's it different?
Yeah. Well, in terms of practicality, we learn practical anatomy and practical physiology. I don't just teach all the muscles and all the bones or all, I teach it as it applies to the practice, and we learn the important stuff that helps us understand what's moving, and we go deeper into the physiology of what happens while we're doing this practice. So the more we understand what we're working with and how what we do impacts the healing physiology in us, the better. It just really fortifies your foundation for practice, and it's essential for teaching.
Right. Can you tell me, do you address emotional component at all in that? I mean, I know it heals on all these different levels, right? The central nervous system, all of those. So because I think you've mentioned the spiritual component of it too. Can you just tell me how different from the replays if you incorporate that, and how you incorporate it? Is it through A Course in Miracles? Is it not through that, or what comes into play in the teacher training?
Well, you end up working in a small cohort. The teacher training does not come with big numbers typically of participants. So it's a small cohort where we get to know each other and work with each other, and so there's a component that is all online. Most of the learning is online. You get to go back and you learn it. There's about 10 hours of practice. So you get a little booklet, and then with 50 class plans in it that you'll learn to teach. And then then there's a class that you do that I teach that corresponds to the class in the booklet. So that's how you learn to teach 50 class plans that are very potent classes designed to help you become a teacher and really get good results in students. Then there's the theory and practice. That's about another 10 hours each month, where you learn more about the theory and practice of Avita Yoga. And there's loads of that. I mean, we just go so deep. I only touch on, across all the replays, I just touch on a really small percentage of that, because people don't want to be inundated with information. And most people just want the benefits of the practice. They don't need to know what's happening. So the training is really for those who want the why and a deeper understanding of the how. The emotional component, it just comes out. If there's motion and history within us, it's in the tissues, it's in our hearts, and it's in our minds. It seems to just come up and out whenever we come together in a cohort and we set this intention to heal. That's it. And all I know is that the emotions are oftentimes quickly brought to the surface as we work with the tissues, because the issues are oftentimes stuck in the tissues. And so it's triggering that way, and we're encouraged to let it up, and sometimes it's helpful to verbalize it. Sometimes there's tears. Like my wife was in the workshop with us last weekend in Minneapolis, And she said, my God, Jeff, I had no idea, but the tears just started rolling down my cheeks in the class. And I can't tell you why, but it felt so good to have that release. That's it. I don't psychoanalyze. All we do is encourage the release of whatever it is that needs to come up. And to me, that is the spiritual practice, because that is the removal of the blockages to the awareness of love's presence. It's happy and whole and peaceful. And just like a restriction in the body, the body will push it down, and it will keep it out of awareness just so we can keep doing whatever it is we want to do. You know, if whatever it is we want to do, your body will do its very best to keep you doing it. But that issue will stay there, and it will want to come up, and the body will oftentimes unconsciously push it down. It's the same thing we do with grievances and traumas that are in our minds and our hearts, and they tend to get pushed down. And so this is a practice that lets all that up, and that's the timeless formula to heal. It's not just Avita Yoga. I mean, that's at the root of many spiritual thought systems. It's in the Yoga Sutras. It's A Course in Miracles. It's in, even Buddha spoke to that. Rumi speaks to that. Robert Frost spoke to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did.
Jeff, can I say a bit just about,
yeah, sure.
maybe, answer are you thinking about the teacher training, Mathis?
Oh, well, I've thought about it. It's not that I don't think about it. It's that I don't know how it will work for me in the moment of life, but I still have the questions. So, it could make a difference at some point for sure.
Well, what I want to say about it is, so I have been a yoga teacher for many years, but I was really an Ashtanga based yoga, very fitness oriented, very fixing and doing and achieving poses oriented. And I did Avita for 6 months, a year before, with the class just as online, before I did the teacher training. And in the teacher training, you really get, and it takes the 6 months to get, for me, to get the whole concept of Avita is you quit teaching to fix. You learn how to teach to allow the healing to happen. And I couldn't have done that without going through the teacher training. And it's not just one aspect of it. It's you finally have to let that. So for us doers and fixers, and I find I have doers and fixers come into my class all the time. They want to fix something. They want to do something. And I could never help them without having the whole teacher training.
Mm-hmm. I appreciate that. You mentioned the 10 hours and the 10 and 10, I think you said a month. Is that what is required, Jeff? Hours wise?
Yeah, pretty much. And then sometimes there's an additional hour or two with a little homework item, pairing up with another student, teaching a little segment. We do this all over Zoom. You learn to teach, and you basically learn to do a private session. You get really good at teaching a private session, which is, if you can teach a private, then teaching to a group becomes a little bit like multitasking a private.
Right. So you do that over Zoom, the one-on-ones?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you're learning to teach one-on-ones or do one-on-ones, but over Zooms. You don't have to go find people outside.
Right. Yeah. You do it with each other. And then toward the end, I do ask you to teach in person. Go, find a friend or a family member or someone that you can teach 20 minutes of a class to, or a small chunk. I'll be very specific to teach such and such to one other person.
Right. Okay. So, and then, so Yeah, for me, you know, the time commitment is kind of a major issue in the moment. That's why I'm kind of wanting to make sure I understand, you know, how some things are like 300 hours, you know, so I didn't know if you have that attached to it, that
No.
kind of thing. And then are the weekends that you do teach, are those recorded?
Yeah.
And then if you, well, I mean, so if there's something happened where you couldn't attend, is it still then okay to do the replay?
Yeah, everything is recorded. The live Zoom sessions that we have on the second Saturday of each month are all recorded.
Okay, it's just on Saturdays?
Yeah, it's the second Saturday of each month for 6 months. That's the only in-person meetup time. And that's where it's about 3 hours that we do, 9 to noon with a short intermission. And we go over the quiz. There's a 10-question quiz that you'll take at home Friday night, and then we review it Saturday morning. And the main reason we do that, they're fantastic questions. I keep the same questions. I sometimes refine them, but they're excellent questions we use year to year, and they stimulate the best deepening conversation. So we learn from the quiz, and then I'll end up doing a private session with 1 or 2 of the students, and everybody's watching. And so you get to see how I ask questions. We really learn, and we take 1 or 2 people real deep into a practice. And that's where oftentimes this, you know, you feel the support, you feel the love, and you feel the stuff wanting to come up. And it's beautiful.
Okay. I appreciate that. That's all I had on the questions.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Hey, Jeff, this is Diane. Can I ask if, insofar as like the dates for the you know, the classes that you have to go to, you say they're the second Saturday?
Mm-hmm.
And what happens if you can't come?
If you miss one of those, they're recorded.
Oh, okay. All right. And that's not a problem, right?
Yeah, it's all recorded. And what's really funny is it's a yoga teacher training, and still most students bring our stuff to whatever it is we're trying to learn. If you go back in college, you know, when you first show up to college or even high school or whatever, there's all this nervous energy around it, and that nervous energy and anxiety just gets in the way of learning. And so I do everything I can to diminish that, to get that energy out of the way. And usually people slip into it pretty quickly, but still, if it's a pattern in someone's life, it kind of keeps coming in. And so having the classes recorded, being able to study and practice in your own time, lots of freedom around that. Then we realize we're just there really to, number 1, heal, and number 2, learn some stuff. And everything in the training, everything that we do remains available to you for $59 a month. If you just keep practicing with me for the same price as everything else. One of the benefits to going through the training is, for the same monthly fee as any other student, you get access to the whole teacher training, and you get access to all the workshops for free. And so
That's
plus
awesome.
we do have some support calls and stuff, because I want you to feel totally supported. And I know there's so much content. It's hard to realize for some students how much juicy content there is. And it takes, I mean, ask Lynn, right? You go back and you take a class and you still are picking it up after 2 years.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of gray area. I mean, and so it pretty much you operate in the gray the whole time. Each
Yeah, that's
is a
it.
whole new gray slate, right? So
That's
so
right.
it makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
The videos are great. I watch the videos. I still go, I mean, I get something out of it. I watch them all the time. I get more out of it as I'm ready to receive more of it. I mean, it's a pretty comprehensive practice that's pretty amazing. So I highly recommend the teacher training. I'm sorry you're cutting it down, the time that you get, because I went through it and we spent 2 whole days for 6 months together every weekend. And we were there for 6 hours for 2 whole days. And that was cool too. I mean,
Yeah.
Why did you cut it down, Jeff? Or how does that?
Well, because I just wanted to make it really accessible to students. And because if I add 2 days now, I just think it becomes more of a demand for people. And all the content that Lynn is talking about is still there. The content is there. And I, like in the last teacher training, I added some time. I'm happy to add some time if everybody in the cohort wants some extra time and it feels like we need it, then, you know, we'll add time here and there wherever we need it.
So okay, so if you're now back on this 1 day, and I think you mentioned, I guess I'm not clear. Are there additional Zoom calls that are not about that Saturday work? Is it like a support call, or is it?
Well, it would just be something, if you were in the teacher training and we met on some Saturday and somebody said, hey, you know, I want more. It's usually not in the beginning. It's usually about the halfway point where, you know, someone might feel like they want more time with me, you know, and so,
Okay.
or we're just, for some reason, there's this feeling that it's not enough time together on Zoom, then we'll just add it, you know, but everybody has to say, okay, here's the time that works, and we pick the time that works and we do it.
Okay. And then I realized, did you say that, what did you say about the $59? Did you say that if you're in the teacher training, when the teacher training's complete, do you still pay the $59 a month or no?
Yeah. So during the teacher training, you don't pay the $59. For 6 months, you get everything.
Okay.
A teacher training and a practice. But then after the teacher training, for the same $59, you get a different kind of membership that gives you access ongoing to the teacher training and lots of other content.
Okay. I got it.
Yeah. So in other words, I'm really just, it's my way of making sure you're supported and trying to really add value and get some more teachers out there.
Yeah.
So I guess my question is, or my understanding was that if I am in teacher training, there's an online class I want to go to, that was all kind of bundled together. Is that inaccurate or an inaccurate thought I have?
That's accurate. That's true.
So
we are talking about doing another workshop in Annapolis in the spring. Anyway, I'll get to see you in person when I come out this spring.
Good.
Yeah.
Hi, I was Lizette. I was just joining the call just to see what y'all were talking about, and I do miss the Avita Yoga. Haven't seen you since the pandemic, and I was just trying
to yeah,
figure out how to get reconnected.
Yeah. Have you been practicing with? I have a couple teachers there in Boulder that are teaching.
No, where are they teaching?
Yeah. Ingrid is teaching at the Little Yoga Studio, and Nicole teaches in Longmont at E8 Studio.
Okay, I'll check them out.
Yeah. I'm online, and I hope to get back there in, I'm thinking sometime either just before or after Thanksgiving, and I'm going to probably do a workshop at that studio in Gun Barrel. And,
oh, great.
Yeah,
I was excited to see that you were doing some osteoporosis stuff. That was exactly what I was hoping for.
Yeah, and at the beginning of this call, we actually talked about that a little bit. So watch for the recording of this.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah, I'll be sure to send you a little note when it goes out.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, great to see you.
Thank you. Same here.
All right. Okay, everyone. Any other closing questions, comments? Yeah. Lovely. Thank you so much for joining in for this. It's a lot of fun, and wherever you are, keep practicing. I'm practicing with you.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you for hosting. Thanks.
Namaste.
Hello again. If you enjoyed today's chat, please share it with friends and family and subscribe so you never miss an episode. If you have a question for Jeff and the Avita Yoga community, or know someone who does, why not join a live chat? They're on the first Wednesday of the month at 1 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. You'll find the link in the episode notes. Thanks for listening.